The last time I had an opportunity to drive the Toyota C-HR, I was by a loch in Scotland. This time around I wanted to up it, so I'm by another body of water, but it's a pool in sunny Ibiza. What could be better than that? There's one important thing, however, which was missing from my previous video, and that's a drive. And that is so important to find out whether they've made the new C-HR better than ever. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to my channel Auto Social UK. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in to my previous video of this car. In today's video, I'm going to give you even more details about this new remastered model. I'm going to be telling you all of the sustainable upgrades and also all of the extra new technologies that you get in this car, as well as all of the driving technologies, which hopefully have made this car a better car to drive. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then you know what to do. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button and join Auto Social UK. So first off, let's start by talking about Toyota's focus when it comes to this car, because they have four main pillars of focus. Those are sustainability, design, customization, and lastly, that dynamic driving. So I'm going to find out whether all of these key focuses have been executed to the best quality. So let's get into it, and first off, start by talking about design. Definitely still very recognisable as a Toyota C-HR. There have been design changes which have made it look sharper and fresher, but it's definitely still the same car. The biggest change for customers that already have this model may be the front. So as it comes down, you have a sloping bonnet and then you've got this flat edge, and it does take a little while to get used to. At first I wasn't sure what I thought, but as I've gotten used to it, I quite like it. It has a bit of a Lexus element about it. You've also now got some updated LED headlamps which are in an arrow design, so that gives it that sharper feel, and I love the way that you've got the contrasting black gloss which blends out from the lights. It's almost like a continuation. It does give it that sharper, more aggressive look. It also looks more aggressive on the road as it's now 35mm wider, so it's a bit squatter. You've now got 18 to 20-inch alloy wheels, although for a car this size, I think 20s might be a bit of an overkill. But the main difference you'll see from the side is you now have a bi-tone design in terms of colours. So previously, you could get a black roof and black wing mirrors, but now you also get this back design which is black, and that gives it a sharper look. It makes it look even sleeker than it was before without any compromise on space, and that's a good thing because space was already pretty compromised, which I'll talk a bit more about when I go inside. Now in terms of colour, this is sulphur metallic. Yellows are always going to be a bit contrasting in the car world, but let me know, what do you think of this colour? Pop it in the comments down below. But if sulphur isn't for you, then perhaps you could go for something a bit more palatable. Like for instance this bi-tone silver car, but personally my favourite colour is actually the one that I previously reviewed, which was finished in dark blue. I just think it worked really well with the contrasting black elements and the two-tone alloy wheels. This silver car is a GR trim, so as you can see, it's sitting on those massive alloy wheels. I do personally think they're a little bit big for the car and they are going to compromise the ride comfort, but if you're going for outright sportiness, then they may appeal to you. The rear design is what we're going to talk about next, and it's changed in some subtle ways which have made quite a big difference. The first change is the spoiler at the top. Rather than being quite a prominent spoiler, it's now sleeker. It's more of a cat ear design, and that's going to help with aerodynamics. As you can see, you've now got a sharper, more angular rear window, and something is missing, which I didn't notice until you guys pointed out to me on the previous video, and that is a rear wiper. There's no longer a rear wiper. Of course, that's because of the sloping roof. You don't necessarily need it because the water's going to run off, but I do know a lot of people do take a bit of issue with this, and let me know, do you think a rear wiper is essential, or do you think you can do without it? I do like the way that you now have this more prominent part of the boot spoiler, which actually comes out to help replace that previous spoiler which is now missing. And the rear light bar now runs all the way along the back of the car. And as I mentioned previously, you have Toyota CHR illuminated in this rear bar. Now, few people asked previously if this is going to light up when driving, and unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, it is going to go off when you're driving. It's mainly for when you're entering the car as your lighting signature. The back is fairly similar. It has the same amount of plastic as the previous model, but it's got a slightly more textured design. It's just a little bit more interesting, and I think that helps with the whole dynamics. Within the UK, you're going to be able to choose between a couple of different engine options for the CHR. The firsts are strong hybrids, and these are a 1.8 litre and a 2 litre setup with a battery which assists the petrol engine. The second is going to be a plug-in hybrid, and this will be attached to the 2 litre petrol engine. However, this car will come a little bit later on, with the strong hybrids coming first. The model that I'm driving is the one that I think is going to be the most popular, and that's the 1.8 litre paired together with the strong hybrid technology. The strong hybrid technology has always been something which is so important to the CHR, and in fact it's a huge reason why so many people buy them, because they're hugely economical. If you go for this one that I'm driving, which is the 1.8 litre, it gets around 140 brake horsepower. Perfect for the size of car in my opinion. It's got good acceleration underfoot. It's not really fast, but then I wasn't expecting it to be. If you go for the 2 litre, that gives you around 195 brake horsepower, so quite a lot more punchy. But again, this car really does shine when it's around town and around city. That is when it's really at its highlight, because it can run in fully electric and it can really give you some great fuel economy while staying nice and quiet and refined. However, if you push it a little bit harder, if you're taking it around these twisty Ibiza roads like I am, it does start to become a little bit less composed. Now, they have worked hard to improve this, because the last car, it wasn't great. So they have given it some better soundproofing to improve the sound of the engine, although yes, you can hear it is still tough. And they also say that they've kind of adjusted how the engine gives you out revs when you're going up hills, so that again it's less strained. But I'm on hills right now and it still sounds relatively strained. Did I expect them to be able to completely banish that noisy engine jumping in? No, because the rest of the range do it as well. The Toyota Yaris Cross and various other cars like that, they all make that noise when you accelerate hard. But ultimately, when it comes to the target audience of this car, they're not going to be accelerating hard, and they're not going to be pushing this car to its limits. They're going to be driving it around town, commuting to work, and for that I think it's perfect, because the absolute highlight for this car is just how economical it is. And they've made it even more economical with a lighter battery, which is 1.5 kilograms lighter than it previously was, but it still gets the same output. In fact, it gets a little bit more output, around 15% more electrical assistance. And just in general, it wasn't a bad car, and I do think they've made just enough tweaks to make it good again. But let's go back to those 4 pillars that are important to the CHR when designing it. And one of those is driving dynamics. Apparently this is something which is important to this car. I guess because when it was released it did have a sporty silhouette. We're kind of used to that crossover coupe look nowadays, so it doesn't feel quite as sporty anymore. And I think everybody knows that if you're buying a small SUV, you're not buying it for driving dynamics. The steering is okay, it's quite light. It is set up for inner city, and that means that when you get onto twisty roads, it's not exactly the most pin sharp. I am taking it a little bit easy around these twisty, bendy roads, and I think if I pushed it any harder, it probably would start to be a little bit more uncomposed than it currently is. The next pillar is sustainability. It's something which has always been the focus when it comes to the engines of Toyota, but now the CHR is going to be the halo product when it comes to sustainable materials. It now features 50% more recycled plastics than the previous generation car. On the interior, you'll find more recycled products, including seat covers, which are made out of plastic bottles. Plus, they've also found a way to the black parts of the plastic on the exterior not needing to be painted. This means it produces less CO2 as it's not needed to be heated or painted and can be just used in its raw, unpainted form. When it comes to interior quality, it's hard to judge when I'm in the top specification GR trim, because in here, well, it's fantastic. You've got a lovely leather wrap steering wheel with the contrasting stitching down the centre. You've also got Alcantara across the door cards, and you'll also find them down the centre of these lovely GR trim seats. These are great. Again, you've got that perforated leather, the red stitching. You've got a nice kind of soft touch armrest, and you will find soft touch plastics elsewhere in the cabin. It definitely doesn't feel as cheap as some of the previous generations, but once again, it's hard to judge when I'm looking at the higher spec trims. The entry-level cars, when they don't have Alcantara on the door cards, probably will feel slightly cheaper than this. But in general, I quite like the layout. There's never going to be a ton of space in these cars. It's never been about space. It's always been about design and style, really. Specification is really good actually on all versions. So Toyota have listened to their customers and they heard that they wanted all versions to have parking sensors. So they all have parking sensors, and then as you go up the range, you add more and more spec to the point where it gets just a little bit ridiculous. Like on this top spec GR trim, you've got a clear sight rear mirror. I just don't really see how this is relevant in such a small car. It almost feels like they've packed it so full of technology, they've just gotten a little bit carried away. It does have a refreshingly logical layout. So you've got loads of lovely steering wheel controls, which include your volume controls, although these are a little bit of a shifter up and down. So if you want to turn your volume up quickly or turn it down quickly, this is a little bit difficult to do. You then have your adaptive cruise control settings on the right hand side, and you will have noticed there is an extra little screen just above the steering wheel. Now this is going to be your detection. So this is going to detect whether you're looking at the road, and it's going to tell you if you're not looking at the road and prompt you to look back. The touchscreen, now this was a huge issue with the previous generation of Toyota CHR. It wasn't great, the graphics were awful, it was very, very clunky. Now this system is very much a huge improvement, but here's my main issue with this screen. It's just super boring. I'm sure you can change the settings to have it lighter and darker, but as you kind of toggle through the different settings, there doesn't seem to be any nice homepage or any nice display. It's just this really boring grey-white screen, which I think is a little bit of a shame. I'd have liked to have seen a bit more colour injected into that touchscreen. You do have a few physical volume control buttons and a button to shortcut turning your music on and off, which I quite like, but that is just the buttons you get for the touchscreen. There is a few further down, which will include, right at the bottom, a shortcut to your 360-degree parking camera and your park assist, as well as your heated steering wheel and heated windscreen. You've also got physical climate control dials as well, which is great, and they're really easy to use. They're very intuitive, easy to use when driving, which I think is fantastic. So it's only really this touchscreen that I think is letting the car down. It has loads of new gadgets, which include loads and loads of ambient lighting, and this just feels a little bit dull compared to everything else. Second time around, sitting in the back of this car, it doesn't actually feel as bad as I remember. It may be because it's lovely and sunny today in Ibiza. The last time I sat in it, it was next to a lock in Scotland where it was dreary and cold, and it felt much more cramped in the back. So it may be the fact that there's just a lot of light coming in. But actually, I've got a decent amount of legroom and I've got plenty of headroom. No panoramic sunroof in this version, but even if you go for the pan roof, you still get the same amount of headroom, which is really nice. Now, it does miss out on some amenities, especially if you go for the lower spec models, but in this model, you do have a USB-C charger at the bottom there, which is kind of helpful. It would have been nice to see too. You don't have a centre armrest which pulls out to reveal cup holders, but you do actually have cup holders built into the doors.
It's not the nicest quality, so when they rattle around it might make a bit of a nasty sound, but actually I think that's quite handy because though it's not the most practical, they have gone the extra mile to try and add in little bits of practicality. Again, on this higher spec model, you do have rear seat pockets on both of the seats, and I think two people could sit happily back here.
Of course, the cherry on top when it comes to Toyota is that 10 years warranty, but that is 3 years standard warranty and then 7 that are service activated. So you are going to have to keep it serviced at Toyota if you want to get the full benefits of that 10-year warranty. I was already pretty impressed by the design changes that they've made to this model, but it all came down to the drive. And I'm really pleased to say that I think they have made enough mechanical changes to make this car better than ever, especially when it comes to that hybrid engine. But let me know, what do you think of the changes they've made to the C-HR? Let me know in the comments down below. I really hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you did want to see more, then you know what to do. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Until next time, guys, see you later.